When you go to your appointment for your glaucoma, the conversation is usually about medical issues, about your treatment, the success of it, is everything going okay, new treatments available. But even the best managed glaucoma will often have some very subtle effects which are not that well discussed. These effects can be so subtle that they're scarcely noticeable, all the way through to really quite disabling. The effects that I want to talk about are contrast, dark and light adaptation, or in other words, how quickly you adjust when you go from a dark room to a light room, and glare. Let's talk first about contrast. Contrast is how you see things standing out from the background. Or another way of putting it is the difference in intensity between the darkness of the object that you are trying to look at and the intensity of the background. We can't do much to enhance contrast. We can't do much to change what's happening in the eyes. But as we get older, all of us lose a little bit of that contrast sensitivity, that ability to detect things standing out from the background. But when there's any conditions like glaucoma or other eye conditions or neurological conditions like stroke or Parkinson's and so on, what that has the effect of is to reduce your contrast sensitivity way back beyond just normal aging, so that the world doesn't stand out crisp and sharp and clear as it used to. Things start looking sort of murky and hazy. So what can we do about contrast? Well, we have to work on ways to enhance contrast because we can't change what's happening in the eye or in the brain. The first thing to help with contrast is to use good light. Now, a lot of people say or assume that when I mean good light, that I mean daylight. But daylight varies, not just with the time of day, but with the season and the weather and which direction it's coming from and all sorts of things like that. You cannot control daylight and you cannot make sure that you have the right light on the right place at the right time. Ceiling lights, it doesn't matter how strong a bulb you put in the ceiling, because of the distance away from you, by the time the light reaches you, it's so spread out that it's also not giving you that burst of light that you need to bring up the contrast. So when I say good light, it means a light that you can place close to the task. The closer the light is, the more intense it is. So you need a lamp that's adjustable, that you can put in the right place, or some means of providing light on the spot at the right time. We can also use other tricks like having contrasting colors in the background, using a dark background in front of a light object and vice versa. For example, putting the food on a white plate and the plate on a plain dark placemat or tablecloth is often more helpful than putting food on a colored plate on a very colorful, say, floral tablecloth where everything just disappears into the background. So removing those confusing patterns and having contrasting backgrounds is a simple way of enhancing contrast. We can also reduce the glare underneath by, say, a line of print by using a matte black card placed under the line of print. That helps to lift the contrast of the print and at the same time dampening down the glare of the background, which can be a big problem that we'll discuss with glare. covering glary surfaces like bench tops and so on with something dull and matte to reduce the glare is often a very good way of improving contrast and comfort. And then there are magnifiers, special magnifiers nowadays, which convert that low contrast or colored print to high contrast black on white. So, for example, here is the magnifier on the newsprint, but I can make it high contrast, or I can make it reverse contrast, which is often easier for people with glaucoma because it reduces the glare of the background. So this type of magnifier not only magnifies in the variable magnification, but it actually enhances the contrast and changes that colored print to black and white or white and black. So let's talk about glare, because that's a really big problem. A lot of people with glaucoma suffer from glare problems. There can be glare from sunlight, of course, or it can be reflected light off shiny surfaces or concrete or water. There are two issues with glare. One is discomfort, and the other is that it can be quite disabling. Most of the sunglasses that you buy nowadays are very dark, which means they're not only cutting out the glare, but they're actually cutting out the light as well. And it's the light that you need to help you to see, particularly if you have that reduced contrast problem. I tend to use a lot of these fit-overs. I use them because they have different advantages. First of all, they have a little rim across the top here, which is like wearing your peaked cap. And actually, that's another good point. Wearing a peaked cap can shade you from overhead glare very effectively. And they have the shields from the side. More than that, all the lenses are polarized. Now, many of the sunglasses you buy nowadays are simply dark tinted plastic lenses. But a polarized lens will cut out glare even when it doesn't have a particularly dark tint on it. Most optometrists will have some fit-overs in stock, but they're usually in the dark colors, the dark brown lens or the dark gray lens, which is good for people with normal vision. But or for people who are very, very sensitive to glare. But for people who have the reduced contrast, having a yellow lens like this doesn't reduce the light so much, but what it does is it reduces haziness. So it tends to put a sharper edge on things. So people who have that loss of contrast often see better with something like a polarized yellow lens. And the yellow lens can also be used indoors, say in very glary shopping centers, or even for watching television or something like that, or at night to reduce the glare of headlights. But for many people with glaucoma, that yellow lens is still too bright. And they then prefer a softer, more pinky ambery lens, which is also polarized, but it's just more comfortable for them. So you need to really look around and shop around a little bit to try some of these things for yourself, because it's a very individual thing as to what suits one person, doesn't necessarily suit another. But the other good thing about fit-overs is that you can quickly take them off. Fit-overs can be used either on their own as sunglasses, or they're used over prescription lenses as well, because they come in different shapes and sizes. So, for example, if you're driving into a dark car park or walking from outside into a dark shop, you can quickly take your fit overs off and you've got your full vision. Whereas if you're wearing prescription lenses, which darken in the sunlight, first of all, they're usually quite small lenses, so you're getting a lot of light in all around. But the lens itself doesn't change instantly. And therefore, it can be quite dangerous even sometimes to go into a dark space from a light space because the lens itself is still dark. And that is a problem for people with glaucoma, because another problem is that it takes people with glaucoma often a lot longer to adjust when they go from light to dark. And that's because glaucoma actually tends to affect the peripheral retina before the central retina. And it's the peripheral retina that we use that we use at night. In the daytime, we use our macula, the center part of the vision. That's what works in light conditions. But at night or in the dark, we have to turn on our peripheral vision. For people with glaucoma, that often isn't working quite so well, and it takes a lot longer to adjust. And often your vision in the dark is much worse than it is in the light. And friends and family have difficulty dealing with that because they don't understand why it is that you can sometimes see so well, and then suddenly you're saying, I can't see anything. But that is something that's very common. And of course, if you're aware of it, then you can compensate for it, or you can explain what the issue is. So there are many different low vision aids available. Magnifiers, a good quality low vision aid, the magnifier will usually have the light built in, and it is well aligned with the lens itself. Magnifiers come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, and they have different magnifiers for different tasks. Many people with glaucoma don't actually need magnification. What they need is the enhanced contrast. And when you've got that, you don't need as much magnification. In fact, for some people, extra magnification makes things worse. So there's all sorts of different aids available. And I've shown you also the electronic ones which change the contrast. But there is nowadays different technology available, such as Orcam. Orcam is a reading device. You don't need to use any vision at all with it. Orcam is a little device that sits on the side of your glasses. It attaches with magnets, and it'll read any text to you, not handwriting. And you can also teach it to recognize faces, it'll tell you the banknotes, tell you the time, even when you're not wearing a watch. It can identify colors for you as well. So there's new technology available all the time to help with many of these problems. The main thing is, remember, good sight needs good, well-controlled light. You have to be able to put the light on the right spot at the right time and not glare. The other thing to remember is you don't damage your sight by using it. Okay, enjoy the good vision that you've got, but you need to experiment around with what makes you comfortable and makes your eyes and vision more comfortable to enable you to live with glaucoma. And that's the important thing. Thank you.